Monday. Well, we've
Mm,
been doing the Euro stuff, but I think it'd be good to talk about the transfer season, the word on the street a little bit, because obviously that's happening in the background while the Euros are happening, and I think once the tournament ends, there'll be a lot of media focus back into who the transfers are going to be. And I think June 30th is an important date for Barca from a finance perspective, how they close the year, where they get back to 1:1, and then what kind of players, they either come in or who leaves. I think there's a lot of interest around that. So it started with Guido Rodriguez. I think Guido's gone. And
mm,
then it was Xavi Simons for a while. And now I think we are talking about Onana and
mm,
Frimpong
mhm.
and Liao. Has anybody talked about Liao yet, or Quara? I think a few people talked about Quara.
Yeah, there has been. Well, that's already gone. I think for a while it was Leao, like the big signing that was meant to, not meant to happen, but he was on everyone's wish list, right? Leao was the one player that would elevate Barca to a completely different level, right? But somewhere along the line, we were like, okay, that's a dream signing that we don't have the money for. And like, we'll ever have that? We don't know. But then it was Quara for a while, who was the cheaper option, still good, but cheaper option. Um, and then somehow we went from him to Nico Williams as the number one target for that left wing spot, which does make sense to me in theory because he's probably the cheapest of the three. I think so. I'm not sure how much Quara would cost, but I think Nico would be the cheapest of the three options. And B, I feel like if Barca are going to be the domestic force they once were, they have to dominate their own market, right? Their own league, their own areas, right? So you have to be able to dominate the Spanish market. That's the first thing they have to do to kind of assert that dominance in the market and on the pitch as well. I feel like if we allow other teams to kind of pick and choose elite players or players with elite potential from our own league, that kind of shows weakness for Barcelona. So I feel like that's what we have to establish dominance first. So Nico makes sense on paper. He makes sense as a profile as well. If you have seen our videos, guys, we have uploaded something on Barca transfer targets on YouTube discussing the profiles that Barca need. And I feel like Nico kind of fits that profile the best. Well, not the best, but if he fits that profile, especially considering that we have Flick coming in, and Flick insists on a certain style of play and certain style or certain profiles that he wants in his team. So I feel like Nico he would tick most of the boxes, right? Is he instantly elite, top of the mountain kind of player? Not quite, but he would get there. If his trajectory goes on this upward spiral that we expect to go, he will be there in the not so distant future. So I feel like that's a good way to start.
You still think Roque has a chance, or do you think he's on his way out? And then also we've been hearing a lot about Danny Olmo. Obviously, he's been playing in Leipzig and he's done well, but is a Danny Olmo the difference maker for Barca as we go into the next season, as we think about our forward line and kind of misfiring forward line that we have?
I don't think so. Daniel Olmo is a fine player in his own right. He's a different kind of profile, though. He's not exactly the breaker runner type that Flick would love in his squad. Because remember, what Flick likes to have, he likes to have runners in the front line. So he likes to have a complete number 9 down the middle, and he likes to have two runners flanking that 9. And what they usually do is they invert, right? So both his profiles at Bayern and at Germany were traditionally more of an inverted kind of runners, right? So they're not really width holders per se. They can hold width initially, but then they would obviously and inevitably cut inside. And Nico and Yamal fit that but more than Olmo does. Olmo would invert, no question. He would be more of a central presence. He would be a box presence. All of that is good. That fits. Now, Olmo is someone who's not exactly fit often as well. That's one of the other big concerns with him that you have. So if you're going to splash any kind of cash, I'm not sure how much he would cost. Is he coming in like a? It would have to be a transfer, a proper transfer, right? With us paying a fee. So I feel like if we're going to splash any type of cash on a player, it needs to be someone who's A, reliable, and B, fits the profile. And Olmo, I don't think he ticks either of those boxes, at least not on paper. he wouldn't be a bad signing because he does offer a goal threat. He does offer that link up in between the lines. So he can play the Barca way to a certain extent. Can he play the Flick way with lots of intensity, lots of running, and lots of invading the space? I don't think so, right? So I feel like even though he's a good player, he doesn't necessarily fit as well as someone like Nico does. Now, back to Roque, that was your first question as well. Roque as a number 9, I don't think he's the kind of profile at the moment that Flick would want at number 9. So if he's gonna play under Flick, which some reports say he will, it could be as a winger as well. It could be as a winger as well because he can be on the left side. He can run into the space and he can be a goal scoring threat on that wing. Not a withholder again, but someone who will attack through the half space and kind of go behind or beyond the defensive line when there's space to be exploited, which in theory under Flick should be or would be one of the ways that Barca would attack. So I feel like as a number 9, potentially not yet, but as this sort of a winger type that I've been preaching for him, maybe, yeah.
But who does he replace if he's a winger? Like, I don't see him replacing either Lamine or at this present moment it's Rafinha. But let's say we get a Nico Williams. I don't know how. We have no money. But if you right, who is Roque replacing to play 1? And 2, if he doesn't, he's fundamentally still a 9. I mean, if you look into what he did at in Brazil in the league, he's a 9 player, right? So I mean, how successful would he be in a role that is probably not his ideal role is the question. And then while we hold that thought, I mean, in all of this, we still haven't talked about the pivot. So the Busquets size hole is still out there. And yes, with Frenkie, you might have a double pivot, and maybe Onana is the answer, or maybe Kimmich is the answer. But are either of them really what we are looking for from a 6 for a Barcelona 6? Right? I don't think either of them are, or either of them solve that problem. And even if you go with a double pivot, let's say Frenkie and whoever, where does Gavi fit in when Gavi comes back? And what's then the ideal positioning of Gundogan and Pedri? If you look into Germany, where Gundogan is playing, I think he's pretty successful. He's probably his best position to play, but that's not the position he plays in Barca, right? So as you think about Gundogan and Pedri and that midfield, which on paper is awesome, but in reality doesn't often function that well. How does that? Where do you think we're going with that?
Okay, so first, Roque. Okay, that was the first question. Roque as a 9 versus Roque as a winger. The thing is, when you're a Barcelona 9, you have to understand that you always have markers on your back. You're kind of expected to be the link-up player as well. You need to be a proficient goal scorer. Of course, you have to be. You have to attack the box. And Roque has that movement. He has the ball striking to be a box threat, right? A goal threat at all times. Now, what he cannot do yet is cannot sustain that pressure from the back, so he cannot really be the press resistant guy who will drop deeper with a marker on his back and then potentially turn and link up with midfield as well as I don't know, Lewandowski used to do, or a Kane does, or Suarez used to do back in the day for Barcelona. So I feel like with that type of marking in La Liga and the type of football that Barcelona play, can Roque be the 9 that we need him to be? I don't know yet, right? So what he does do well is kind of exploit the space, play in transition, and then be at the end of those passes near the area or inside the area, and then he uses his ball striking to kind of finish those actions. Now, under Flick, we might see more of that. We might see a more intense style of play where we're still very direct, very vertical, but also want to exploit and identify the space as quickly as possible. And that's kind of the similarity between Flick and Xavi, because Xavi had the same idea. Now, Xavi didn't really trust Roque. We don't know why. Was it the level that he showed in training? Was it the level that he showed on the pitch? He wasn't really on the pitch that much, so we can't really judge him on that. But as a winger, his role wouldn't change much, right? So he wouldn't be the withholder. He wouldn't be the dribbler. He wouldn't be the creative force. He would be more of a runner. And he would be more of a Ferran Torres type of winger. So if you look back at Barca, in Xavi's first season, Torres was the left winger. He was sort of a utility pick who would kind of create space for others, who would exploit the space behind the defensive line, and he would then be near the box to kind of score and create those goal scoring opportunities. And I feel like Roque, this role suits him more because it kind of alleviates the pressure because he's not as marked. He's not as involved in the build-up play. He doesn't have to touch the ball a lot. What he has to do is he has to exploit the space and he has to be the runner and then a goal-scoring threat. And I feel like that plays to his strengths much more than number 9, who has to be theoretically far more involved in the overall play, right? So I feel like having him in a role that kind of puts less responsibility onto him, that would suit him a bit more at this moment.
But that won't work really in this Barca right now. I mean, if you look at the way the team is set up, and the way the team is expected to play, I mean, would he really get that opportunity? Lewandowski is not sitting out with Flick in charge, so he's still playing full on every game out there. Lamin's not sitting out, great. So yeah, yeah, sure, Copa del Rey, we can play a few games, but I doubt for that amount of spend, for that amount of, I mean, would look like that either he finds an actual role in the team or he's out.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Can he can be useful in those roles that we mentioned, but is he actually going to get a chance over any of the other players? I don't know. I don't know, honestly. I don't see him being a Barca starting number 9, just not yet, especially with Lewandowski there. Lewandowski's, we know what he's like currently due to age and all of that. But yeah, you would assume that he would still play under Flick, right? Lewandowski will still be the number 9. So a rotational role either way. So if it's on the wings or number 9, he would be a rotational role. It doesn't matter where, but he'll be a rotational role, right? If he stays as. Now, what was the other question? So it was
and the 6, the Barcelona 6. We have heard about every name, but we still don't probably hear the right name for the 6th position yet.
Yeah, that's true. The ideal Barcelona 6 doesn't exist in the market for us. We cannot find a single pivot in the market and just go and buy that single pivot and he solves all our problems. I don't think that happens. But even if there was this theoretical, I don't know, this perfect player that can play number 6 for us, I still believe that if you bring that player in, let's say bring in Rodri, for example, who everyone thinks is a perfect number 6 for us, even if you bring that player in, I don't think that he corrects or fixes the issues that we have. I still believe that one player, so that one individual, no matter the profile and the quality of that player, I don't think that he can offset the dynamics of the whole team, right? So you have to have that collective intent. You have to have the profiles and the coaching and the structure to play a certain way. Unless you have that, chucking a player that can theoretically slow down the tempo or control the game, it won't do that much of a difference. Even if you put a Rodri in a Xavi Barca are likely not going to change the whole identity because of that one player, right? So I feel like that's still a thing. We have to remember that chucking a player, even if it's a perfect 6, into this current Barca side, it wouldn't guarantee us control or better tempo control or better, I don't know, slowing down my pause of the game, right? So it doesn't work that way unless the whole team's intent is fully focused on that control and that tempo control, right? So that's the thing with these 6s. But that 6 doesn't exist anyway. So we have to create that 6 in the aggregate. How we do that? A double pivot. Currently, double pivot is the only option Barca have because just can't get that one single individual who will fix all the problems, right? So yeah, we've not been hearing the right names. We do hear a lot about Onana, and I feel like Onana would be a good pick. Kimmich he's not a pivot, right? He's something entirely different. It's not a pivot. So if he does come in, then Barca need to pair him up with the right profile, right? He does give you something. He does give you quality. He does give you distribution and technical aspects. But Barca do have a lot of that in the team already. So I feel like it's not necessarily the type of profile we need. But everyone knows that, right? Everyone knows that Kimmich is not the ideal target. Maybe Flick wants it because, he has good and fond memories of him. Yeah, they've played together already, and he was successful under Flick. So can Flick put him to good use and optimize him? Probably. Maybe he can. But even if that happens, it won't solve some of the biggest issues that Barca currently have. So you do need a player like Onana or like Vifer or like Guido to an extent, but not exactly. So yes, those would be the profiles that I would
But who would be
kind of.
better, Dom? Like when you think about, okay, so let's assume Frankie de Jong is staying. Let's assume last year of his contract would be silly to
Mhm,
leave that and go. It would be better for him to leave next year on the free, right? So
mhm,
let's assume that he's going to stay. So
mhm,
if he's staying, then he's part of that double pivot, correct?
mhm,
As
mhm,
long until like Gavi's not returning. Gavi's not returning this year, probably. Yeah. So if
mhm.
it's de Jong,
Yep.
given the way De Jong is stylistically, who's a better fit? Is it Kimmich or is it Onana that we should go? Because we can only probably scrape some money to buy one, maybe. That is also
Mhm.
not sure.
Oh, it's not Kimmich. Oh, definitely not Kimmich. I would go for Onana 10 out of 10 times ahead of Kimmich. Onana would be, well, as close to an ideal pick as you can get at the moment. If you want a big name who comes in and does the job reliably well, I think Onana is the much better pick. I'm still in the Vifer camp. I still feel like he's the more realistic and cheaper option that kind of provides you with a lot of similar attributes like Onana. Maybe not as good. Maybe not as good. Let's put it that way. But at the same time, he's stylistically it fits, right? He's still someone who can cover a lot of ground, who can run a lot, who can also play on the ball a lot. But he's also a double pivot player at the moment. He would need to be molded into a single pivot profile. So that's the thing. If Barca want to eventually transition to a single pivot at one point in the future, they would have to mold that player into a single pivot player. However, considering the cost and the profile and what we currently need under Flick, I feel like I would still go for Vifer. Now Onana would be the more surefire thing, right? So it would be more of a guarantee, as much as a guarantee exists in football. So I would go for Onana if the finances allow that. If not, I would go for Vifer.
Let's take a question from Van Lee, who has joined the stream. So Van Lee has two pointers. I think he's asking about the high line and space eaters on defense like Paul Leonana and Araujo are a must.
Mhm.
Do you see it that way? Especially is Araujo even staying or keep going? That's the first question. I always feel this way. And yes, Onana's recovery ability is amazing, and threat on set piece, sure, agreed. But is that what we are missing? Like our midfield has a lot missing in terms of just. And then I think here, another pointer on Gundogan's ability to press high
Mhm.
anymore.
Mhm.
So, which is true. Definitely, time catches up with you, and you can't really press as much as you used to. But even
Mhm.
then, I thought, at least if I see the games in Germany that he's playing, his positioning and how he's affecting the game, that's pretty substantial. I think he gets to do that in Barca, and I think there's still a
Mhm.
role or for something like that in this team. What do you think, Tom?
Mhm. So the number 10 for Flick is very interesting. That is kind of a more of an attacking role, obviously, and is more of a space interpreter like Miller. However, a big part of Miller's role under Flick was the pressing. So the number 10 often was the guy who would initiate the press, who would lead the press and recognize when and how to press. So that was the guy who said, okay, now we're going to funnel the team to the outside, or now we're going to try and channel them to the inside. And then he would start the press. He would be the one who would be the de facto leader off the ball as well. Now, can Gundogan do that? I don't think so, right? I don't think he can. He has the intelligence and the brain for it, but the legs just won't do right at this stage of his career. So I feel like Gundogan would be a good fit on paper, and he was much younger than he is right now. So that role kind of falls into someone like Gavi or Pedri. I don't think so, right? Pedri can do it for maybe one half, and then
Yeah.
he would drop off, right? And rightly so, because we don't want to put too much stress on Pedri, because off the ball dueling and running affects your on the ball efficiency, right? So if you are someone who um, will press a lot and duel a lot, that will inevitably take a toll on your technical ability. So the more you have to press and duel and run, the worse you are on the ball. And the worse you are on the ball will require you to press and run a bit more, because you're more mistake prone on the ball, right? If you lose more balls, you have to recover more balls. That's kind of how it goes. So it's a vicious circle that kind of goes round and round. And the more you the more you falter in one aspect, the more you falter in the other aspect,
Yeah.
and it would just go round and round. So I feel like Pedri would not necessarily be the best one to lead the press and be this dueling machine that a Flick number 10 was
Needs to
back
have.
in the day at Bayern. Yeah, it used to be back at Bayern. So if that changes, if the leaders of the press are somewhere else, potentially yes. If Pedri is alleviated of that responsibility, then potentially you could have Pedri in that role or Gundogan in that role because they profile wise they do fit that role. They can do it. Gundogan even more so because of his attacking kind of instincts and all that. Gavi could do it. Gavi could be the one to do it. So there is potential in that, but the other players it's difficult. Gundogan is far more effective when he's higher up the pitch. We've seen him how he influences the final third and how he creates chances and buries chances as well. But then you have to give him less responsibility in the press. Otherwise,
He just
Otherwise,
doesn't have the legs anymore to do both at the same time. It just
yeah,
doesn't.
exactly. And yes, I do agree, Van Lee. Felix would be a great flick number 10 if he wasn't lazy. That is a good point because I feel like if Felix is going to have a better season at Barca, he has to be more essential. So the number 10 would suit him, apart from the pressing. Yeah, if he was to somehow be convinced or I don't know, just if his mindset was a bit different, he would be a great number 10. And
I
what
think
was
there
the
are
other
a couple of
question?
other pointers that Van Lee has talked about, which is about why Diaz over Nico. I think it's because he's Portuguese. Sorry, did I just say that? No, it's
Mm,
because Deco. That's what I personally feel. Whatever the media says, but yeah, I mean, on the surface of it, I think Nico has potential, but Nico hasn't. I mean, at the highest stage, Diaz has actually performed. Um, has got a little bit more experience on that side. We've been seeing this in the Spain games as well. Like Nico does stretch the pitch and is amazing, great potential, but I think there's that little bit of on who will give more immediately, right? From a experience point of view, I think that's maybe the one argument, but actually it's not a very strong argument. So I think
mm.
the only argument that actually is there is that he's Portuguese, Deco's Portuguese. That's basically what it is. I'm just simplifying it massively. But yeah, there's no point of Diaz over Nico. And then
Mm,
yes, Wirtz. I think Florian is a player that everybody wants to sign next year. I think every large team is looking at signing him. So it won't be easy for Barca if Barca want to sign him. Number one. And
yeah.
then I doubt how much our finances will be next year. Yes, we are hearing we'll turn a profit this year, whatever. And we hear
Hmm.
these things around June 30th all the time. And then we'll see some media reports how awesome we are and so on.
Mm,
But I doubt whether we'll have the ability even next year to go in for
mm,
a large deal like that. So, but if it does, more than happy. So, okay, coming back into Felix, Cancelo, these are topics that
yeah.
still need to be talked about. So, what do we do with Cancelo, right? Provided Balde is coming back, we're hearing that he's coming back. So, what's the best position? Hearing that he's staying, and Rafinha. So
Mm,
Rafinha, Felix, Cancelo, great names on paper, but haven't really, except Rafinha, haven't really consistently
mm,
delivered what was required on the pitch. So as you
mhm.
look into next year, what do you feel about that?
So yeah, Rafinha, I think he's been good. Yeah, as you rightly pointed out, he has been good, and his
He's not
only
amazing, but his output is there.
yeah,
like
it's
when
always
you, when
it's
you
always
like
there. Yeah.
output is there. You can't complain with the output.
He's simply a player that's very. He can be very one-dimensional sometimes. You know what he's going to do. We know what he's good at, and as long as you play to his strengths, he will always give you something. He'll always give you output, and that's good. But also, when you compare Felix's number to Rafinha's number, they're not that far off, right? Okay, so in terms of pure output, the final product, the goals and assists, I don't think there was a big difference at the end of the season. Now, what Rafinha does offer is that work rate. He does offer the mentality, kind of unyielding mentality, that way he's always going to give 100%, right? So that matters, especially for a flick Barca that will, on paper, have to be much more intense and much more ready to run and work hard. I feel like Rafinha would fit that to a certain extent. Now, Rafinha's other fault is that he's marketable, right? He can be sold. He can be sold for a decent sum in theory. Now, are Barca going to sacrifice a Rafinha for a Nico Williams potentially? And I feel like that would still be what I would do if it came down to selling Rafinha to get Nico. I would potentially pull the trigger, right, and go for that trade. Now with Cancelo, I don't know. I feel like Kunde and Balde are kind of the ideal or most optimal flick tandem, right? The fullback tandem. Balde on the left, Kunde on the right, because generally Flick does prefer one of his fullbacks to be more of a hybrid, so someone who stays back, forms a back three, and then is more of a distributor on the ball, and then the other fullback would be the more attacking fullback, a progressor, a carrier, and then someone who has the final third impact if needs be. So kind of like a Davies and Pavard kind of thing. And I feel like Kunde and Balde are almost a perfect mirror of that partnership that Flick used to have at Bayern. So I feel like that would be the go-to names on paper. And now Cancelo could be a rotational piece for either of them, but then that changes the whole dynamic of the team a lot because Cancelo is not like Kunde, he's not like Balde. He's very, very different. He's more of a specialist in what he does, and he plays in a very different way. He will be often in midfield even, and he will be in the half space distributing the balls into the box. So he's a bit different, right? He's a bit different, and putting him ahead of Kunde on the right or putting him ahead of Balde on the left changes a lot. It changes the whole picture of the team. So it remains to be seen how Flick wants to. Does he want to replicate Bayern at Barca, or does he want to do something entirely different? That's the big question. Because if he wants to replicate Bayern, then Cancelo is kind of the odd man out, right? So he's not really
You can't replicate Bayern at Barca. You just don't
You
have the
can't.
people. It's
Yeah,
just
you don't have the
impossible.
people. Yeah, doesn't mean he won't try though. He's very stubborn. He's very stubborn in the way he knows how. That's a good and a bad thing, right? Because Fleck is very set in his ways, right? He knows what style of play he wants to play. He knows what he wants to get out of his players, and he will kind of persist on that. Now, that can be a good thing because it gives you clarity of ideas, because it gives you, okay, now we know what we need to do, we know what we want to achieve, and Flick will work towards achieving that. So that's a good thing. The bad thing is, what if he doesn't have the resources and the profiles to play a certain way, but he still forces that upon the squad? That's something that Xavi did to an extent. He tried to use the players in a way that wasn't optimal for their profiles, and what we got in return was, well, it wasn't a disaster, but it was a very, very suboptimal kind of squad, right? It was a squad that was maximized to any extent, right? So that can be a double-edged sword in terms of how Flick wants to set up. Now, I don't think, as you said, I don't think he can replicate Bayern. Is he going to try? How? I don't know. I don't know. I hope not, but I feel like he will try to an extent.
Well, he may try for sure, because
Mm,
when you're successful with something, you don't want to let go of that philosophy. Don't want to let go of that winning formula. So yeah, 100%, he might try. And because Lewandowski and Gundogan are there, I think he will have that a little bit of support with heavyweights in the dressing room to try things. So I think yeah, possibly. A couple of
mm,
things that I would, also wanted to bring up, Dom. One was obviously Araujo and the situation with him. Is he going? Is he staying? One. But beyond that, I just wanted to talk about how well our salon clauses are doing. So we got a good windfall from Chari Riyadh, I think 15 million. Going into Crystal Palace, I think there are talks about Mika Marmol, your favorite player. It looks like he's going to get on the sell-on clause. I think there's something on Todibo as well. I think his did not work out with Manchester United because Nice and Manchester United, same ownership or whatever. But looks like some of these can come true, and we can Barca can actually make some money.
They could, yeah, they could. And as long as we don't, yeah, Mika Marmo is one of my guilty
Strange
pleasures.
how many defenders we have created, no, for La Masia,
Mm,
being and all the attack that Barcelona is known for. There's hardly an attacking player out there.
mm,
Yes, Fati and Lavine for sure, but so
mhm.
many defenders out there.
I know, yeah, it's a surprise because usually, okay, yeah, Barca do create these ball playing monsters from the back line. That's true, But yeah, we do have a couple of defenders that are actually good defenders as well. And I feel Mika Marmol he is one of them. I mean, it's a shame that he didn't get more of a chance at Barcelona, but he had a great season. And I feel like both offensively, so on the ball, and defensively as well, he was quite well, not complete, but he was quite good in all aspects. I feel like was that good enough to actually get a shot at Barca, a bigger shot? I don't know. We'll see what happens. And Mika Faye is one of the people that might get a chance in the flick as well, unless he's sold, because there have been links, to other clubs and the reports stating that he might be sold, which would be a mistake, I think. Okay, if you can get some money and retain, a purchase option or something like that, okay, maybe you go for it if it's good money, and reportedly that it is good money, so I can see them entertaining that. However, in without context or just on paper, he offers you a lot, right? His profile is really, really good, both mentally and physically and technically. He's a good profile, so I feel like he would be someone to keep an eye on in the future as well. Todibo as well. I think Todibo is someone who we let go too easily, right?
Yeah, I think we should have kept him for a bit. He's a good player.
Yeah,
good player.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I think so. But then they just thought, okay, we have enough depth here at the moment. So I think that was the thinking process behind that one. But we'll see. But yeah, lots of loanees that could potentially come back, that could potentially be sold, that could potentially have.
Longley is coming back, our favorite defender, with the highest
Yes.
salary, so he's back again.
Yeah, he'll be the second highest paid.
So how does that feel?
I know. To be honest with you, while he was at Barca, and yeah, he had these brain farts, so to speak. He always did, and he was that kind of a player who could be reliable to a certain extent, but then he would do something very, very dumb in certain situations, and he would undo all the good that he had been doing so far. But yes, I never had a huge beef with Longley. I think he was decent to an extent. He was someone who would do the job quietly, and he would have decent ball playing as well. He was a left footer as well, so that offered you something different in the build up as well. So I did like him to an extent. I never had anything in particular to say against him. But yeah, as your second highest earner in the team, and a player that you don't really rely on and don't want to have in your team, it doesn't look good. So we have to get rid of him. that's
yeah. It's a weird thing. And to your point, yes. Did he deliver what he was required to? Probably. And hasn't Araujo made silly mistakes? He has. So if you compare apples to apples, I mean, it's like there is cause and effect on both sides. But it does feel like we'll have a lot of our loanees coming back. And where do you fit them in? Plus, you have Johnny Rodriguez, I think, and Marcus Otto. At least these two players from the B team who are like knocking at the doors of coming in. How does that pan out? And also, I'm forgetting who's the player from Girona who scored a lot of goals, whom we are thinking of buying in the B team.
Player for Girona, I don't remember. No, who do you mean?
I'm forgetting the name. But anyway, from a La Masia perspective, which players do you think are going to make an entry into the main team? Because that will also kind of affect the shape and structure of the team, or what we do in the transfer market and so on.
So you mentioned Casado, and I love Casado. If you guys have been following us, I've done a thread on Casado like 2 or 3 years ago. I think it was 3 years ago, and that was I back then I felt like, okay, this is the player that we have to keep an eye on, and I'm so happy that he actually extended his contract and he's going to stay, because I feel he can have a big role in the team. That said, he might be more of a Frenkie de Jong replacement from La Masia than a single pivot replacement. So that's something to keep an eye on as well, and take into account. But I would guess that he due to his work rate and due to his technical qualities, I think that Flick will like him and will kind of keep him around the first team and see how he does. Same goes with Mika Faye. I feel like Mika Faye could be someone that Flick would want around the first team as well. So those two names at the moment, I think, have the highest chances of actually having an impact, or actually having the chance to play in at least a preseason, right, and see how it goes, and then depending on that and the transfer rumors and the offers, we'll kind of reassess what to do next.
Yeah, Gio Fernandez we are hearing a lot about him. And yes, Pau Victor, that was a name that was not coming. I was confusing with
There you
Pau
go.
Tomasi, whatever. But yeah, Pau Victor really, if you watch some of the games, especially at the end, he really good player. Definitely, given our state of, forwards and how we struggled in front of the goal. So yeah, there are some really 4 or 5 potentially interesting
Yeah.
candidates out of La Masia that can come in. And then that's what it looks like. And then you have Mbappe and Vinicius on the wings next year. So how does that feel, Tom?
I mean, I don't even know what to say. On paper, it's very scary, but we have to remember that we're gonna face Madrid 2 times in the season, and maybe in the cups. Yeah, if the draw is that unlucky, but yeah, so we don't have to worry about them as much, right? Let's just focus on ourselves and let's win the games that we play against other teams as well, and then we do our best against Real Madrid. It doesn't mean we can't beat Real Madrid, because as good as they are, will always pose a threat, because if there's someone who can beat Real Madrid in these types of games, it's Barcelona, right? Regardless of our form, regardless of our players, will always pose a threat. So I feel like, well, on paper, yeah, they have a much better team, a more established team, a team that's more filled with superstars. I don't think that it's all doom and gloom, right? It doesn't mean that we can't compete. So I want to put that bit of positivity into our fan base as well, because it's not over, right? It's not over just because they have Mbappe. I mean, it will be difficult, no question about that, but it's not impossible.
I think Barca has a mental block against Madrid. Barca has a mental block against Bayern for sure. But with Madrid, I think they actually believe that they can win. Because of how it has shaped up over the years. So yeah, to your point, I think it'll be a lot more balanced than what it seems right now. But okay, before we wrap up, and Dom, we've been talking about this. So we hear these stories from the media about, so Nana today and Words tomorrow, and then Frimpong, and then you have all kinds of names. But forget all of that. If you had the choice, right, to sign any 6 out there, money is not a concern, nothing is a concern, and you just sign the 6 that you think, and you'll sign on the wings. If one swinger, one 6, and one forward, if these were the 3 people you were signing, who are you signing, Dom? Money is not a problem, and nothing's a problem. All the problems have been solved for Barcelona.
I'm probably signing Onana, Leao, and then a 9. Oh, you know what? This is gonna sound very, very sketchy, but I would actually sign Darwin Núñez for Barca as well.
Oh, there you go. Why should it be sketchy?
I would say Núñez, Leao, and then probably Onana, and that would be my window. I mean, there's obviously better options. I mean, Rodri, but I wouldn't go for Rodri. I would go for Onana ahead of Rodri even. So there you go.
Yeah, it will. But yeah, I mean, it would be good actually if we actually did a proper video on this with all the data and the stats and so on. Maybe we'll do it one of these days, Dom. Because how does actually a Darwin Núñez fit in, if he, like, theoretically, conceptually, and so on? That'd be keen to see, good to look at. And then if he comes in, or if a person like that came into the team, how does that fit? And I was watching the Portugal game last night, and I was watching Leao. It's very different, the way he plays in Portugal and the way he plays Milan. Very, very different role structure and his impact. So that'd be cool. Okay, so that was your 6, so which is Onana, and then there's also discussions on Rodri. I think yes, Guimaraes is there, but I don't think we have the money for Guimaraes. I just like 100 million or something like that. So we have the money for something. So it looks like, we still aren't very clear on what the names are. Lots of names as usual. And I think until the Euros are over, we won't really get a good picture, because every person will be busy with their teams and so on. Once it's over, I think the agents will move, and we'll also have a better idea about what our finances are in about 6 days, when we'll have to report on numbers for the end of the year. And that should give us an idea of whether we'll be able to spend anything at all, and then who comes in or not. But I hope, like, we get some, like, even if we spend less, we get at least 1 or 2 good players rather than just one and so on. Anyway, last thoughts, Dom. We'll obviously do more of this as the transfer goes by, and there'll be lots of names will come through. So we'll whenever we get the time, we'll get in and we'll talk about the transfers a little bit and what makes sense. But Dom, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. This is our first Barca related stream, and we hope to do more as the season kind of comes closer, and then in the season as well. It's been good so far. I hope that you've been enjoying our Euro coverage as well, because that's also something new for us. So it's a lot of novelty for us and a lot of experimenting as well, because we're obviously not as experienced in all of this. We're not professionals, as you can see. So, but we do like football, right? That should be obvious, and we like Barca. So I hope that you've enjoyed our content. And make sure to subscribe to our channels and blog and podcast, because there'll be a lot more coming your way in the next couple of days, and then going to the next season and the transfer market, all of that stuff. There'll be lots of talk about Barca and lots of talk about football. Yeah, come and join us, and we would love to have you.
Yeah, and we will be on our channel. We'll be producing a few more in-depth videos about some of these profiles where we are working on. So those should come out soon enough. We just thought that we would also spend a little bit of time on the Euros, because everybody's watching the Euros. So it's like that way. Let's try it out. So we are doing that. And yeah, join in whenever you can. Thank you for the comments and everything. It makes us feel good that we just didn't spend all this time just talking to each other about it, which we got done on the phone. So thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. And with that, we would possibly close this stream. We'll be back again, I think, day after. For which game are we covering, Dom, on the Euros?
Croatia, Italy next.
Croatia, Italy. Yeah, we'll be back on Croatia, Italy, and we'll be covering that game. So that'll be fun. And till then, stay safe, watch the games, have a nice Sunday, and like always, Visca el Barça.